Hello and thank you for joining us on Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Brandon Yates and today we will be discussing the beginning of the new NBA basketball season. We'll examine player performances, potential title contenders, as well as some Chinese players that may find themselves in the NBA in the future. I'll be diving headfirst into these points with my two fantastic co-hosts, Fuyu and Tianyu. And Fuyu, we've already seen some blockbuster trades going on. We've seen a couple of the rookies coming into the NBA performing relatively well at the beginning of the season so far. But what have you made of the performances that you've seen from the trades as well as the rookies so far?
Yeah, of course, a lot of the attention and everyone is looking at Victor Wembanyama.
Wemby, of course,
because,
yes.
Yeah, he's the #1 pick.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are comparing him with LeBron James already because they were both the #1 pick. And
no pressure, right? I mean, that's a crazy comparison to make so early in his career.
Yes,
but he seems to be dealing with the pressure quite well, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and they've both exhibited great potential in both in terms of playing on the field, and they've also demonstrated their commercial potential.
Okay.
So yeah, going into this season, some people are already quite familiar with the French player that is landing in the NBA.
I can't think of a rookie in the past that's had so much attention placed on them. I guess when LeBron came around, social media wasn't that popular back in those days.
20 years ago.
Yeah. So I think now with the emergence of Wembanyama, it seems like the social media craze around him, I think, has been a lot greater than it has been for any other rookie that we've seen, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years. So I think that there's a massive spotlight on him right now. And I guess there's also a lot of pressure on him from fans and from the Spurs, hierarchy and everybody that's expecting him to do well. But like I said, he seems to be dealing with that pressure on and off the court very well.
Yes, I think as a young person that's living in the digital age, he was born after 2000.
Yeah.
And he's handling
Makes me feel so old.
he's handling everything pretty well. And for Wembanyama, his NBA debut with the Spurs, I think he scored 20-something points.
Not bad.
Yeah, of course, not bad for a player who's playing his first official NBA game.
And with all the hype that's around him, I mean, he must have been feeling immense pressure going into that game.
Yes, and I don't need to repeat the stats for that game here, but I think he is definitely a ray of hope for San Antonio, who's looking for a revival because to be honest, they haven't been doing that well in recent seasons.
They've kind of flown under the radar for quite a long time now. They've never really been mentioned in, the title contenders, conversation.
Yeah, which I don't think should be happening at all because actually there's a special place in my heart for San Antonio.
Okay.
I remember it was the 2000 and, if I'm correct, it's the 2002 and 03 season. And my first NBA game was the Western Conference Final between the Spurs and Dallas.
Not a bad first game to watch.
Yes. So yeah, in my impression, they are champions material. So they shouldn't.
This season?
No, I mean traditionally.
Okay.
Because that's
traditional powerhouse.
Yeah, when I first got into...
Because they've got quite a strong history.
Yes, when I first got into basketball, they were playing for the conference final. So that's my impression. And I think they shouldn't be overlooked. And definitely I hope that with the arrival of Wembanyama, they will maybe not immediately retain their success, but this will be a road to revival.
Yeah, I guess it's a good jump start for them to kind of get things going again. It might not lead to immediate success, like you said, but I think having someone of that ilk and with immense talent and seemingly untapped potential, I think that the future for San Antonio could be very bright indeed. But I think with that being said, Wembanyama really has to step up to the plate and make sure that he fulfills that potential. And I think that's going to have a lot to do with his performances on the court, but I also think that the coaching staff at San Antonio also have to really step up and take a hold of Wembanyama and make sure that he reaches those heights that he can.
Yeah, and to do that, there are a few things that I think Wembanyama needs to work on. Of course, in the past games, he's demonstrated his versatility and his consistency, but I think he just needs to get stronger.
Yes.
Because at 7'4" and with his crazy wingspan, those create conditions for probably for when he shoots outside the 3-point line, which makes him a natural for basketball. But still, his lanky frame and his height at this point actually plays to his disadvantage. When he rubs shoulders with bigger players, it puts him at a disadvantage.
It potentially allows him to get dominated around the paint, I suppose.
Yes, and he's also been dealing with some injuries, and that could happen a lot more often if he doesn't work on his physique. So I think...
So that's where I think a lot of the responsibility in terms of protecting him, I guess, lies with San Antonio. Look, he has to do a lot of work himself. He needs to get into shape. He needs to increase his strength and make sure that he maintains his fitness and all of that. But I think when he, suffers a couple of bumps and bruises or potentially, career-threatening injuries, hopefully that doesn't happen. I think San Antonio will have a large part to play in protecting him and making sure that he does reach that potential that he has.
Yeah, potential is something that he certainly has, but he's not quite at LeBron James's level.
Not even close.
At the same stage of their career when they first got into the NBA.
Do you think that's a physical issue? Because when LeBron did get into the NBA as the first draft pick, he was already quite a physical specimen.
Yes. That's one of the issues that he needs to deal with. And also it remains to be seen whether Wembanyama can grow into this influential figure that LeBron James has since become.
I guess something that also could potentially affect Wembanyama either positively or negatively is that versatility that you talked about, because I think we've seen in the past when players come in and they can seemingly do anything on the court, it's quite difficult to give them a role. And I think it's also quite difficult for that player to stay in a specific role. So do you think that's something that San Antonio or Wembanyama himself need to manage? Do they need to find a specific role for him?
Yeah, at this stage, it's still early in the season. It's only just beginning. I think people at San Antonio and Wembanyama himself are still tapping into his potentials and finding out about what he can do. And in the past few games, he's shown that there are a lot of things that he can take on. But the important thing is for them to find out where he excels and how to use him.
And to utilize those areas of his game that are probably the strongest. And I think, we've seen some other great NBA talents that I suppose rose to the top of the game late in this, relatively late in their careers. I think of the likes of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who also came into the league relatively unknown, was also not very physically strong. But now that he has, gained a lot of weight and a lot of muscle, he's probably the most dominant.
Tremendous change.
So he's probably the most dominant player in the NBA right now, and I think that Wembanyama potentially has that ability to get to that level. So Tianyu, we've already kind of touched on Wembanyama's performances in the early stages of his career. I think he's only played 2 games at this point. What have you made of his performances so far?
It's actually 4 games.
4 games, okay.
We've did like a prediction of his performance in NBA in earlier episodes, and it's time now to give an initial review of the starts of his debut season. And a lot of people are actually starting to call him a bust now for not showing.
He's got a little bit of heat online, right? He's getting
present.
a lot of stick from some of the fans.
As he's the number 1 draft pick, and as someone with such a tall body, he should do more. In the first game against Dallas Mavericks, he's been struggling a lot in defense as he only played 23 minutes in the game and was forced to exit after picking up the 4th foul early in the 3rd quarter. And I think he was still having some kind of cold feet in the first of the games in the new season.
I think it takes some adjustment too, because I think the officiating in the NBA is a lot stricter than some of the European leagues. So maybe that's something that he's not used to. And also he might be struggling with the physical side of the defensive game.
He was so used to playing in the French league, and now turning to NBA is a totally different playing
completely
field.
Different ball game.
And I think he wasn't playing with full confidence like he was in France. In the game against the Clippers, he was being guarded by Dillon Brooks, and Wembanyama was nearly silent during the entire first half. And he was only 4-10 from the field, and ended up with only 11 points and just 5 rebounds. That's something quite, I think, unacceptable for
Yeah,
someone
particularly the
with a-
rebounds, because I think that's a lot of that has to do with just efforts,
Yeah,
not necessarily talent.
Yeah, that was clearly not good enough for many fans who had high expectations for him.
Yeah.
But I think let's just not jump to the conclusion too soon.
Definitely
because
not, yeah.
Even
It would
though
be a
he did-
huge mistake
yeah.
considering his potential. And I
Yeah.
think the fans of San Antonio in particular also need to manage those expectations because he is incredibly young. He has a lot of physical development to still undergo.
Yeah.
And look, adjusting to the NBA is not easy, no matter how much talent you have. So I think that they need to give him some time and maybe take a bit of a
Yes.
back step with, in terms of the negativity that he's facing on social media in particular.
Yeah, I mean,
and it wouldn't be fair to judge him just after only a few games.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least give him a season.
Yeah. But
And
like
even
we've also
though-
said, because there's so much expectation around him, more than we've seen probably in the last decade, you know, I guess it's understandable that fans are getting frustrated considering that they haven't seen what they were expecting at this early stage.
Yeah.
But they really do need to practice patience because there is definitely a lot of world-class talent in that man.
Yeah, I mean, even though he did struggle in the first of the games, we could still find a lot of highlights actually from his performances. In his debut game against the Mavericks, he was able to block a shot in the opening minute of the game. And when he
That's
returned,
always great for fans to see. We love a block shot.
yeah, and electrify the audiences,
Yeah,
the spectators. And when he returned midway through the fourth quarter, he quickly scored 7 points with a powerful dunk. That's what the fans need to see.
So we're getting glimpses of that potential. Maybe we're not seeing consistently at this point, but we've definitely seen periods of play when he's involved that there is definitely something to be unleashed in terms of his talent.
Definitely, and I think a lack of efficiency was not just his fault alone. You know, the whole Spurs team doesn't have a truly experienced player to guide them, and they actually have the youngest squad in the whole league. So I think there's still room for improvement in terms of coordination and team cohesion for Spurs.
And I think that's what you mentioned there, the fact that Spurs are the youngest team on the NBA roster. I think that could potentially negatively impact Wembanyama because a lot of the focus around him and all of the expectations around him, if there's no experienced players around him, I guess he's going to take on a lot of the responsibility that experienced players would normally take on, which I guess makes sense considering his abilities. But then again, having abilities without experience, it makes it quite difficult to take on a leadership role.
Yeah.
So we may see San Antonio struggle this season, but then again, the future looks really bright for them considering the amount of young talent that they have. So I think fans need to really manage their expectations, not just of Wembanyama's season, but potentially of San Antonio's entire season.
Definitely.
For you, it's early days in the NBA season, but I suppose at this stage we can kind of predict who might be title contenders. Do you have any in mind at this point?
Yes, but don't laugh.
I won't.
Yeah, I'll first pick two, and they are Phoenix and Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, they are my picks for the
Decent
finals
picks.
in.
Those are not laughable at all. I mean,
Yeah.
over the last 2-3 years, those have been very impressive teams, and they've got a very strong team, both of them.
Yes, they are my picks for champions from the Eastern and Western Conference, and I think they will win their conferences simply because the strong lineup that they've acquired this season, their recent history, their recent success. And
So they've actually, even without the trades that they've done for this season, prior to that, they already had great success. And it looks like they've improved their squads this season. So they could be even stronger this year than they have been in previous years.
They've reinforced their squad.
Yes.
For Phoenix, they showed their ambition at the NBA championship when they acquired Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. And these new arrivals, a combination of experience and vitality, I think will lead them far.
Yeah.
And for Boston, I think as long as Jason Tatum is here, they can't do that bad.
Yeah.
And also
Jaylen Brown, and they've got quite a lot of talent.
Yes, still the core of their past success is still there.
Yeah.
And although there's no LeBron James or Stephen Curry level superstar on this team, they still have a very, very balanced squad.
Yeah. I suppose Kevin Durant's in that conversation in terms of LeBron James and Steph Curry. Maybe he hasn't reached that level in recent years, but I think in terms of talent, I would say he's up there.
Yes, he could be a leader in this squad. And I mean, this Boston squad doesn't have a clear weakness that other teams can exploit on. So,
and I think over the years, Jason Tatum has definitely taken on a leadership role too. I think every season that I've seen him progress, the talent's always been there, no doubt, but he seems to be a lot more mature each season. And I think that this could be a potential breakout season for him, not just in terms of what he does on the court, but his leadership abilities.
Yes, and I think that also partly comes from seniority.
Yeah.
He knows that now this team evolves around him, so he has to take on that responsibility to lead the team.
And he's got a great wingman in Jaylen Brown too, who I also think is a phenomenal leader and a fantastic player as well. And he's just signed a new long-term deal too.
Yes, so for the Eastern Conference, I don't see anyone challenging Boston. So they'll definitely...
Bold statement.
Yeah, they'll be the champions of the Eastern Conference, if not the champions of the finals.
Okay, we'll have to look back at this podcast in a couple of months' time and see if Fuyu's predictions are correct there.
I agree with Fuyu.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about your predictions, Tianyu. What do you think?
First of all, Denver Nuggets.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Which I think
undeniably
remains like the biggest favorite for this season.
For sure.
Nikola Jokic is proving in the first 4 games that they're still the most dominant force.
Yeah,
in the
and
game.
Jamal Murray's also been performing really well, right?
Yeah. They lost Bruce Brown, Jeff Green this season, but the core players like Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. are still with the team. So
so like the heart of the team is still there, particularly Jokic. I mean, everything revolves around Jokic.
Yeah, the foundation is unshakable, and Michael Malone is still their head coach. So I would say they're still going to be a major contender for
Let me pose this question to you, Tianyu. If Jokic got injured and was out for the entire season, do you think that the Nuggets could cope?
I think they have the depth to cover to cover the title race.
I think that they would love to send him out in each game covered in cotton wool because he is so integral to that team.
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, they've got 3 or 4, potentially even 5 players that are, I wouldn't say of equal importance, but that are equally important in terms of making that team function.
Yeah.
So listen, I hope nothing happens to Jokic. I love watching him, and of course, I want the best for every team in the NBA, and I want every team to have a full roster. But if Jokic did get injured, it would be very interesting to see how Denver would handle that situation. For you, let's bring it to China. Of course, we love watching the CBA. It's always entertaining action, and it's a really fantastic league to watch week in, week out.
And the new season has just got underway.
Yeah, and Yao Ming, the president of the Chinese Basketball Association, recently made a visit to America and the NBA, and he said that the partnership between the NBA and China is still strong, and that NBA players are welcome in China, and the NBA has said vice versa, that, you know, we welcome Chinese players in the NBA. So it seems like there is a good relationship between the NBA and the CBA, which there hasn't always been traditionally, but it seems like it's in a good place right now. With that in mind, are there any current Chinese talents that we may see making the switch to the NBA in the near future?
Yeah, there is one young Chinese talent that some people are saying could be the next Chinese player to land in the NBA, and he's 18-year-old Yang Hansen, who's currently in his debut CBA season, and he plays for his home team, Qingdao.
Yeah, but that's a lot of pressure on an 18-year-old that hasn't even played in the CBA yet.
So young.
Yeah. But
he must have a lot of talent if they're talking about him like this before he's even stepped foot on the CBA courts.
Yeah.
Yes, he was first discovered, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago in his home province, and he's now playing in the CBA. And the 7'1" center is actually more of a blocker than a scorer, and he is known to make assists that evoke Nikola Jokic.
Right.
In fact, some people tout him as China's Jokic. And
that's a lot of pressure, man. A lot of pressure.
Also reports
currently the best player in the NBA, and he's being compared to this guy, and he hasn't even played CBA yet. So hopefully he can handle that pressure.
Yes, and he's also reportedly being monitored by the Nuggets.
Of course. They want to find a Jokic substitute.
Yeah, but at his age, it'll take him a few more seasons before he can join the NBA draft.
For sure.
But I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing, because for him, one thing that Yang Hansen is lacking is experience. So a few more years at home and a few more opportunities to play at international level competitions will definitely help him gain that experience and evolve into a leader both at his club and even at the national team
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. I think the important thing with young players, particularly that aren't from the USA before going to the NBA is, look, even if they're not coming up against quality opposition, I think it's important for them to stay at home and get as much playing time as possible and develop their skills and their confidence.
Yes.
So that when they get to the NBA, they can handle the pressures that come with it, both physically and mentally.
When they're substitutes, like they're sitting on the bench for most of the games. They
Yeah.
have to handle the...
So we need to see these young players getting as much game time as possible. So I think with this particular gentleman, I think the more time that he spends in the CBA and in China, it could really benefit him and maybe give him a greater chance of getting to the NBA.
Yes, and depending on his performances to date in the CBA, he definitely needs some more time to develop. And I think that he will complete this transformation, and he is definitely one of the future stars for China's basketball.
It should definitely be a very exciting career trajectory to keep an eye on, so we will definitely be keeping our eyes on him.
Yes.
Tianyu, you know, we've already discussed a couple of NBA teams, a couple of trades. You know, we've talked at length about Wembanyama and the fact that he's been compared to LeBron, and I think LeBron has also spoken very highly of Wembanyama. But let's focus on LeBron James now, probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest basketball players we've ever seen. I believe he's in his 21st season now, or 26th?
Yeah,
Is it the
21st
21st season?
21st,
Which
yeah.
is phenomenal. I mean, even though he entered the league at 18 years old, the fact that
Unbelievable.
the fact that he's maintained this level of dominance for over 20 years is absolutely remarkable. Do you think that this could potentially be the final season that we see LeBron James playing in the NBA?
Well, last season when Lakers was eliminated by the Nuggets, James did say that he was considering about retirement.
Yeah, I think he said it immediately after the game, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember it was a post-match
I
comment.
guess he was really disappointed at the
Yeah,
time.
of course.
And,
Understandably so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is time for him to really consider saying goodbye to the league. He will turn 39 in December.
Age is just a number, man. Age is just a number. When you're that athletic and you take such good care of your body, anything is possible. I mean, Tom Brady was playing in the NFL until his 40s.
40s.
Yeah, so I don't know if age is that much of a factor when it comes to LeBron James.
Yeah, I mean, he can still be the role model for young players in the team, and he still managed to use his rich experience to help the team and hit double digits in the games. But I think his body has certainly gotten in his way. You know, injuries, wear and tear have cost him over 100 games in 5 years with the Lakers. And I think it could well be the last season, his time in NBA, and his last chance to claim a title.
But do you think it could be his last season in the NBA or with just the Lakers? Because there might be a team that doesn't necessarily need him to play week in, week out, and they might need his experience and, you know, his big match temperament.
Yeah.
So do you think there's potentially for you another team in the NBA that could benefit from having someone like LeBron James?
Yeah, his contract with the Lakers does run out at the end of this ongoing season. And LeBron James has previously hinted at possibilities of going to another team. And I think that makes perfect sense because he can still play. The motivation is not there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's still
It's
there.
still there, yeah.
So it'll be a loss to the game and to the fans to see someone walk away from the sport, even if he is still able to contribute. So yeah, I think this. I'm actually debating whether I should say this is his last season because I really think so.
Yeah.
He's
Like entirely or just with the Lakers?
the end of his career.
Okay.
Because he's previously said he wanted to devote more time to his family.
Right.
Yeah, after that medical condition with his son.
Yeah, of course. That was very, Bronny, he had a heart condition or
Yeah.
something, right? He
Yeah,
suffered
yeah.
a cardiac arrest during a match or
Yes.
something terrible happened. So I'm sure that really shocked
Yeah.
LeBron and probably made him reconsider everything that he's currently doing and anything that he has planned in the future. I'm guessing all of that attention now will probably be devoted to his family. So that probably made him question his time remaining in the NBA.
I mean, he's already got everything, and the titles, the MVPs, and I think his pride can't afford him to go to a weak team and you know, just to make.
He doesn't necessarily have to go to a weak team, in my opinion. I think what he could do is that, and we've seen this in the NBA in the past. We've seen players that have kind of gone past their peak, but still have something to offer in terms of their abilities, but more importantly, their experience and their leadership. They can offer kind of a player-coach role in the sense that they motivate the starting team, and they can also have an impact off the bench. So I can see him having an impact like that, not necessarily in Los Angeles, but maybe for another team that's competing for a title. So even though he might not be the star of a future title-winning team, he could still be a part of a squad that wins another NBA title. And I think for someone like him, that could still be very appealing. And I'm sure he would love to share his knowledge and experience with up-and-coming players. So I'm sure that's also weighing
like
in on his mind.
Wembanyama.
Yeah, like Wembanyama, exactly.
Yeah,
but like you said, for you, like I think his family obligations are also going to come into his mind. So in terms of balancing those two ambitions, of course, family will be more important to him, but do you think that he can manage his family obligations and completely dedicate his time to that side of his life while still providing some really invaluable experience and talent for not necessarily a dominant NBA side, but a team that could maybe go on and win the NBA with his involvement, but not necessarily in a starring role?
Yeah, if he joins a smaller team which can relieve him of some of his duties on the court, I think he will be able to achieve that balance between his professional career and his family. And there's also, I think we also have to take into consideration injuries. He's had a heel problem, I believe, during the off season. And at the beginning of this season, he said that he's excited about what's to come. So it's still possible that he will stay with the Lakers or another big team that are capable of challenging for the final. But whether he walks away from the sport or not at the end of this season, I think we're lucky that he is still here.
Absolutely.
At least this season, because with him, both him and Wembanyama at the same, competing in the same season.
It makes it more exciting.
We're seeing this two of these generational leaders that are
generational greats, and one just starting and one kind of ending.
They're coming together or coming against each other could be very exciting.
It's like passing on his legacy.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to LeBron James and any team that he potentially plays for, it's going to be a conversation. I think he's going to make it very clear that his injuries need to be managed, his family obligations come first, and they need to figure out how they're going to use him. So I think in terms of his next move, if he is going to stay in the NBA, that conversation between him and any potential team needs to take place. And I'm sure that some sort of common ground can be found, and hopefully we can see LeBron James stay in the NBA for hopefully 1 or 2 more seasons, because we, of course, love watching him play. But that is all we have time for on this week's episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we will be back next week with our latest topic, and we'll see you then.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.